welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Bianca. Please don't touch that. Wait a minute. Be right back. Okay, so I'm back now. Sorry about that. My son is just learning how to walk and it is really exciting for him, and he grabs onto everything he can find, including my tripod, so it wasn't a great idea filming around him. But I really wanted to film a quick intro for this video. I'm going to show you how I made the dress that I wore previously. It is, as usual, a really simple DIY that any beginner at sewing can do. So I hope you enjoy today's video. So let's get into it.
So for this DIY you'll need some lightweight fabric. I'm using this brown viscose fabric. You'll also need some fabric scissors, a measuring tape, some elastic band. The one that I've got is a bit wide, but I'm just going to cut it lengthwise to make it thinner. You will also need some pins and a pen to mark out your fabric. So first you'll need to take your measurements. The first measurement that you'll need is your upper chest measurement, so where the dress will sit. And then you will also want to measure from this point downwards so that you'll know how long you want your dress to be. There is another measurement that I recommend taking, and that is your hip measurement, and I'm going to explain shortly why. Now let's take a look at the pattern. As usual for my DIYs, I like to keep things simple, so all you have to do is to cut out some rectangles. The first rectangle I marked as the body, so this will be the dress part. The length will be your chest or hip measurement plus 20 centimeters, so about 8 inches. I am pretty straight up and down, and I also didn't have a lot of fabric to work with, so I've used my chest measurement. But if you do have curves, I recommend using your hip measurement just to make sure that the dress will fit you. Or even better, if you have a lot of fabric to work with, I recommend cutting out a trapeze. So you will use your chest measurement and add 20 centimeters, and you'll do the same for your hip measurement at the bottom. And the width of this rectangle will be your desired skirt length plus 15 centimeters, so about 6 inches. And if you're new here, I've used my black pen to write out the formula, so how you can come up with your own measurements, and I've used my blue pen to write down my own measurements. So my body rectangle will be 1 meter by 65 centimeters. Now moving on to the ruffles of the dress. For the length of the ruffles, you will need your A measurement, so the length of your first rectangles times 2. So in my case, this will be 2 meters, and I want my ruffles to be about 14 centimeters wide. And for my 2 straps, I will need approximately 6 centimeters of fabric. Now here I'm quickly going to draw my piece of fabric. As I've said, I didn't have that much fabric to work with, so I wanted to make sure that I cut out the fabric as efficiently as possible. For my dress, I've used about 1 meter 50 by 76 centimeters. So the yellow part will be the body of the dress, and I'm also going to draw 3 pieces for the ruffles, which I am going to connect later to create a longer piece of fabric which will go around the dress, and I will use the remaining pieces of fabric to make the straps. Now that we have everything planned out, we can go ahead and cut out the fabric. So this is the biggest rectangle, which will be the actual dress, and then I'm going ahead and cutting out 3 strips of fabric, which I will connect to create the ruffles. First step is to take your biggest rectangle and fold the upper edge 8 centimeters. This is the part that will create the ruffle at the top. You can either pin it or iron it to secure it in place. So then you'll want to go ahead and fold it once again inwards about 1 centimeter so that you'll have only 7 centimeters left. Then pin it in place and sew using a straight stitch. So now you'll have a clean and straight stitch, and you will need to make another one to create a tunnel for the elastic. But first I recommend trying on the elastic over your chest just to make sure it fits, then add a couple of centimeters seam allowance. As I've already said, my elastic band is a bit too wide for my liking, so I will go ahead and cut it in half lengthwise just to make it thinner. This is just a personal preference, so if you like wider elastic you can go ahead and use that. And to make sure that the tunnel will be the perfect size for my elastic, I just placed it on top of the fabric and I've marked out the width of the elastic. Then you can go ahead and sew another straight stitch. Here I'm using my tube turner to insert the elastic. I find it to be the easiest way if you have a straight piece of fabric. And after my two elastic ends meet, I am going to sew them together using a zigzag stitch. You could also skip this step and just sew the elastic together with the fabric in this next step, which will be to fold the fabric right sides facing each other and sewing along the edge of the fabric. I'm first using a straight stitch and then I'm going to go over the edge of the fabric with my zigzag stitch just to make sure that everything stays in place and doesn't fray. So here is how my dress looks like by now. It actually looks like a potato sack, so I'm not sure if this brown color was the perfect choice, but whatever, we are going to go with it. I think it turned out pretty nice. And now I'm going to connect these three pieces of fabric to create a longer strip, which will be our ruffles. So I'm just placing them right sides facing each other. My fabric is the same on the front as it is on the back, but if you have a printed fabric you have to be careful. So I'm just pinning them together and sewing them using a straight stitch and then going over the edge of the fabric with my zigzag stitch as usual. And now that we have a longer strip of fabric, I'm going to set my machine to a straight stitch with the longest stitch length possible. Mine was 5, and I'm going to go ahead and sew a straight stitch along one edge of the fabric, making sure that I don't sew backwards at any point. Then I'm lightly pulling on one thread on each end to create these ruffles, and I'm basically arranging the ruffles and moving them along the thread using my hands. Next step is to connect the ruffles with your dress, and I recommend starting at the seam. Place the ruffles right sides facing the dress and pin everything in place. I've also connected the two ends of my ruffles using some pins, and this is the part that you will want to sew first. So first sew the ruffle ends together and then sew all around the dress. Before creating the straps, I recommend trying your dress on and using a measuring tape to make sure you have the perfect length for your straps. In my case, this was about 45 centimeters. I had a small piece of fabric left over which I wanted to use for my straps, but then I tried my dress on and decided to make it a bit shorter, so I ended up using this piece of fabric to make my straps. You can make them as wide or as narrow as you like. If you make them wider, it will be easier for you to turn them right sides together again, but I made mine pretty narrow and I struggled a bit with the tube turner. Now all you have to do is to sew the straps onto your dress. Make sure you make a mark where the straps will go when you try on your dress, and also make sure you don't sew them on the elastic. And now that this part is done, all you have to do is to hem the bottom of your dress. I also like to go over the ruffles with an iron, just to flatten them out a little bit. So here's my finished summer dress. You can wear it as it is, or you can belt it if you like to accentuate your waist. I think it's perfect to throw over a bikini if you are going to the beach. It's a really quick and simple DIY that anyone can do, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!